Plato's Allegory of the Cave by Dave Marsland of Cardiff Theosophical Society. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is a philosophical concept that explores the nature of reality and the human condition. In the allegory, Plato likens the experience of people who are not enlightened to that of prisoners in a cave who are only able to see shadows on a wall in front of them. Plato explains that these shadows represent people's perceptions of reality and that the truth can only be accessed by those who leave the cave and experience the world in its entirety. At the heart of this allegory is a story about a group of people who have been held captive in a cave since birth. They are chained to a wall and forced to face a blank stone wall, with no ability to turn their heads or move freely. Behind them, a blazing fire illuminates the wall in front of them, casting shadows which the prisoners believe are the only reality. They have no awareness of the outside world or any other reality beyond the flickering shadows before them. Between this fire and the captives, a low partition is erected along a path, which means that shadows can be created and manipulated by those who control the cave. According to Plato, there is only one way for the prisoners to break free from their ignorance and gain true knowledge. This requires one of them to be freed from his chains, to turn his head and look directly into the light of the fire. Initially, this would be a painful experience for the freed prisoner, as his eyes would struggle to adjust to the brightness of the fire. However, as his eyes gradually adapt, he would begin to see the objects and the people in the real world beyond the cave. After a time, with his eyes now adapted to withstand sunlight, the prisoner would venture out of the cave. Plato argues that this is the point where true knowledge is attained. The freed prisoner would finally be able to perceive the reality behind the shadows before the eyes of the prisoners in the cave. This prisoner would believe the outside world is so much more real than that in the cave. He would try to return to free the other prisoners. Upon his return, he would be blinded in the dark because his eyes are not accustomed to moving from actual sunlight to darkness. The chained prisoners would see this blindness and believe they will be harmed if they try to leave the cave. Plato's allegory can be interpreted in several ways. One interpretation is that the cave represents the limitations of our physical senses, and the shadows on the wall represent the imperfect understanding we have of reality. The prisoners in the cave are like humans who are trapped within their own limited perceptions of the world. The shadows they see on the wall are like the illusions and concepts that we create to make sense of our limited experiences. Another interpretation of the allegory is that the cave represents a world of ignorance, and the journey out of the cave represents a journey towards knowledge and enlightenment. The prisoners in the cave are like people who are living in darkness and ignorance, unable to see the world as it truly is. The journey out of the cave represents a pursuit of truth and knowledge, which can be difficult and painful at times, but ultimately leads to enlightenment. Plato's Allegory of the Cave also touches on ideas surrounding power and control. The prisoners in the cave are controlled by those who hold the power to manipulate the shadows on the wall. This can be seen as a metaphor for various systems of power that exist in society, where the ruling elite control those under them through the manipulation of ideas and perceptions. To conclude, Plato's Allegory of the Cave is a thought-provoking concept that challenges to question our perceptions of reality. It invites us to consider the limitations of our senses, the journey towards knowledge and enlightenment, and the systems of power and control that exist in society. Ultimately, the allegory reminds us that the pursuit of truth and knowledge is an ongoing process that requires us to constantly challenge ourselves and the world around us.